Well, I'm sure they voted in good conscience. I'm just simply talking about a fact, which you've just reproduced, that there was a big difference between the preferences of the different generations. And the reason I made the comments, I mean, I was reacting to information that had come out that a significant number of people were saying we are willing to make a sacrifice in order to have Brexit. I mean, originally, of course, people used to argue that by having Brexit we'll be better off, but people are now saying, well, we're going to be worse off, but that's fine, we'll put up with it. But what then emerges is that the people who are saying this are people who are older people, they've retired and they've got a protected pension, and it's younger people who will actually have to pay the price. So that's what I was reacting to. And the martyr jihadi language wasn't mine. I was simply reacting to other people's use of it. I know that's slightly dangerous territory. Case point is still really important, though. This was a democratic vote. Yes. The point of democracy is everybody gets to have their say, whether you agree with it or not. Frank Field, Labour MP, who is the same age as you, has described you as a miserable old Ramona. The fly. In regards to this, the reality is that we are leaving. That's a process that's going to have to happen now. We had a vote on it and we've made that decision. And be it by coming out and saying these sorts of things and putting the blame squarely at the feet of the older generation, who are, as you described, as squarely at the feet. I was simply making an observation about the fact that there are different. Who's that helping, though? Well, going forward. So let me just go back a bit. I mean, I'm a great fan of Frank Field, actually. It's a pity we've resorted to sort of public punch-up on this. Yeah, the public have voted very narrowly. And, of course, there is a younger generation coming through. You know, 16, 18-year-olds weren't allowed to vote. More and more people coming through. Do you think more sway should have been given towards the younger generation? Absolutely, who are yeah. So it was a travesty that they weren't allowed to vote as they were in the Scottish referendum. But the younger vote as a whole, from 18 up to 45, 50 or whatever, do you think that vote should be counted as more important as the vote for the older generation? No, I don't know. Everybody's vote's equal. But the simple fact of life is that you've got a younger generation who are, you know, they're under pressure in all kind of different ways. I mean, they're much less secure in the labour market. They find it difficult to buy houses, all kind of problems of this kind. And in addition, the fact that they're much more outward-looking, much more comfortable with Europe has been overridden. With you more? They agree with you more? Well, no, that wasn't my reason for saying it. But I am the older generation, as Frank Field points out. But I do feel that we've actually collectively let young people down.
Well, how are you getting on with being leader? Because even just with this, it's interesting, isn't it, that you say, well, actually, I was just reacting to what someone else said. It's not my language. Are you finding it more tricky when you're the leader of the party to make observations like you did so effectively about the financial crash when you were lauded for being an economic foreteller and a guru? When you're leader, those words suddenly mean a different thing, don't they? And you have to come up with different solutions. I was acting leader of my party at the time. Okay, but I think, no, I go back to that because one of the reasons why there is a kind of somewhat of a sour mood in the country is 10 years after the financial crisis, we're still dealing with the aftermath of it. Well, even worse than that, they're predicting a new one, aren't we? Credit, we're using credit cards more than we have for a long time. We're relying on credit more. Do you think we're heading for another financial crash? Not in the... And now as leader, what would you do about it? Well, not in the way we did before, because the banks have been made safer. They have to hold more capital. But there are some bad things happening. I mean, you know, one has to be frank about it. There's been an enormous credit boom in the last year. People living off credit cards. Credit's going much faster than the economy. It is a problem, that. And this is actually what's keeping the economy going. It's not that businesses are investing. We're relying very heavily on consumer credit. And, of course, the other thing that's happened since the banking crisis, the people who are responsible have never really been brought to book. And I think that's partly why there's a lot of anger and frustration around the country. But what would you do, though? Because, I mean, that's all great observations. Yes, what I would do, I mean, one of the things that worries me about the aftermath of the financial crisis is that lending is increasingly concentrated on property. Businesses can't get access to credit. So one of the things I did when I was in government, I was Secretary of State, started a British business bank to get more credit to small companies, because that's what drives the economy, and we need more of that. That's where the emphasis needs to be, not piling more credit into property, driving up the price, making it more difficult for people to buy and rent. OK. You talk about being held to task, and one of the reasons that everybody was, or all the people that voted to leave you particularly, got so fed up
was because the amount of money that was being spent beyond their control. And there's a headline in the Daily Telegraph, and this story across a lot of newspapers this morning, EU chiefs and expenses scandal. This is a scandal. It took a Spanish investigative journalist 3 years to get the European Commission to publish the details of a couple of trips. This is 2 months' worth of trips. £24,000 was spent on a 2-day trip to Rome by the Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker. £24,000. We've been through our own expenses scandal here in British politics. This is exactly the reason people get fed up with the idea of Europe controlling this budget and being able to spend £24,000 on private jets, Vince.
That is a disgrace. And, you know, freeloaders like Juncker, you know, bring the European project into disrepute. And no attempt whatever to defend it. There is a lot of waste of money by people like him who are perhaps not aware of the public opinion the way they should be. European members of Parliament have had equally bad track record. But as you quite rightly say, it's not just a European issue. We've had an expenses scandal here. But in no way would I be willing to defend Mr. Juncker's excesses.
And yet still the organisation that provides him the ability to do it.
Well, the European project is about much, much more than Mr. Juncker's habits. It is about, you know, having open trade in Europe. It's about common approach to environment. It's about keeping us secure. I mean, you know, the European project has done many, many good things, and people like that who bring it into disrepute shouldn't be allowed to obscure the big picture.